Hey everyone, it's Tom Kradza, and on this episode of the Your Life, Your Term show, we chat with Danielle Chiasson, who is flipping and rehabbing homes pretty much all by herself. She does have a team around her, but she's the driving force behind this. She's a mom with 3 kids, great story, and she does this in a very systematic way. You're going to hear her use the word systematically a lot. She's very well thought out. She plans stuff in a lot of detail, probably in a lot more detail than Nick and I have when we flip properties in the past. So just a great story to share. We're very thankful. Had a good chat with her, and we start talking about interest rates and inflation and appreciation and that kind of stuff. So I always get all excited about that stuff. So we kind of deviate into some other conversations along the way. So great chat. And listen, if you are listening to this and you want some real estate education yourself, the best place to go from us would be to our monthly class where we introduce some of the concepts that we're using today in 2019 on how to invest in the Greater Toronto area, whether that's doing some condo stuff in Toronto or going all the way out to London, Ontario for some student rental stuff by Western University, or doing duplexes in Barrie, or doing legal second suite stuff in Oshawa, renting out properties in Belleville, or doing straight rentals out in St. Catharines. Whatever it is, we're using a bunch of different strategies, multi-unit buildings in Kitchener, Ontario. So whatever it is, we share the strategies that we're using today to generate cash flow and buy properties at a class that we do. You can register for that class at www.canadianrealestatetraining.com. That's canadianrealestatetraining.com. And Jenny or Anthony from the office will call you and confirm your spot and give you all the wonderful details. And with that, let's get on with the show.
Are you ready to live life on your terms? Is it time to take charge? Real estate, business building, the economy, health and nutrition, and more. It's the Your Life, Your Term show with Tom and Nick Kradza. Are you ready? Let's go.
Okay, Danielle Chiasson. Am I saying your last name properly?
Yeah, that's great.
Chiasson. What nationality is that back?
French.
It's French.
French-Canadian.
Oh my gosh. Don't tell me you're a Habs fan.
Oh my God, no. I'm not even a hockey fan.
Oh, great. Okay, we can be friends. We can be friends. I thought you were going to tell me you're a Habs fan. And wow, okay, that's a good start. We're off to a good start. So tell me more about how you, we started just talking really briefly, but you are a single mom, 3 kids.
3. How
How old are the kids?
14, 13, and 11.
So you're just a little bit busy.
Not at all, Tom.
Yeah, and then you're. I just want to kind of jump right into it, and then I'm going to
Sure.
backtrack a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You flip homes, like you buy, renovate, and sell homes as your primary business activity right now?
That's right. Yeah. So I have my company, Perfect Property, is my rehab. I don't flip, I rehab, Tom. There's a difference.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
There is a difference.
Flipping just sounds better on TV. You know, all the flip TV shows. Okay, you
so
rehab.
flipping is where you just do a cosmetic redo when you just make it look nicer. Rehabbing is when you actually improve the property. And as you know, as a realtor, you can improve the life cycle of a house.
Did you just call me a realtor?
No.
Keith on our team is also listening in on this podcast. So if anyone listening to this doesn't know, Nick and I are we have our real estate license, but we're not realtors.
So I am adamant about that as well, Tom. So when people say, well, why are you a realtor? I say it's a tool in my investor toolbox.
Yeah,
so just to put it into perspective,
yes, yeah.
Absolutely. But I say that as a realtor because you had to take the same courses that I took. And so we learn when we go through the educational training in order to get our licenses that we can extend the life cycle of a house. So rehabbing a house is when you're actually improving the house, as opposed to, in my opinion anyway, flipping is where you just, do like paint and floors, and you're actually not improving the state of the home.
Got it. And if anyone's listening to this, we get calls from TV producers all the time. Not all the time. It's like once a year, I guess, when they start looking for different things. And I didn't know how scripted some of those TV shows are.
Oh, yes.
Like they're totally have the house. It's already
right.
decided. They get 3 people. They tell people, we haven't chosen you. Like on the TV show, they'll say, okay,
Right.
we're interviewing you to see if you're going to work with so-and-so to flip this house or rehab this house. And then they turn them down on the TV show and they are looking all disappointed. Those are some investors that we work with here at Rockstar. So they tell us like, it's so scripted. Like they even on one fridge in one property, they made it worse. Another house, they spray painted the wall to make it even look worse for
Right.
TV and all that stuff. Anyway, so how did you get to this point where you're doing this with real estate? Can you walk me to this point here? Because like, because are you working in these properties yourself? You're hiring contractors?
I actually have contractors on my team that are on my payroll.
Okay.
And so I've done it both ways. I've done it with subs that I've hired to come in, and I've done it with my team. So the thing is that I found with subs, as you know, I'm a little bit anal. I'm a bit of a control freak. And so with subs, they tend to like to work their own hours. And, you can, I don't know, when you're coming in and you're doing a 4.5 hour day and you're telling me you did a full work day, that's problematic for me. So I'm very structured. People that know me know that I'm structured. I'm systematic about things. And, at the end of the day, if you know what materials you need for the next day, you either leave early, hit Home Depot on your way home, or, pick it up on your way to work in the morning. But leaving halfway through the day on my project to go get stuff at Home Depot, and it takes you 3 hours to go there, pick up the stuff, load up your truck and come back, doesn't work well for me. So, for me, working with my own guys that I have a little bit of control over works better than working with subs.
I feel like you and Nick would get along really well, because that never works for Nick as well. Oh. So you have high expectations. You're a very kind and positive person, so you have high expectations for people. Sometimes I just have like low expectations, so I don't get, maybe it's a self-defense mechanism for myself, but I have low expectations on a whole bunch of stuff. But how did you get to the point where you're putting people on payroll? Like, that's going to be scary for most people. Like, most people are using subs when they're rehabbing, and I'm going to ask you about what properties you buy in a second, but like, to get to the point where you're putting people on payroll,
right? How
do you get to this point?
Yeah, that was a hard decision for me, because as a person that is highly responsible, taking on somebody's livelihood and taking that into my own hands is not something that I took lightly. Now, some other people, they're like, oh, okay, well, I don't have any work, lay them off. Or I know we can get this project done within 3 months, and I can let them go within 3 months and there's no repercussion, and use, the rules around the labor laws to their advantage. And I mean, construction is a dirty business, but I want to be able to sleep at night. So I'm just not going to go there. So it took me a while to hire this guy. So I needed to know that I had my marketing in tuned enough, that I had leads coming in, that I knew I'd have the next project lined up so that I could get him going, keep him busy. And I actually just hired my second guy this past Monday. So that was also another really difficult decision for me, because I'm like, well, now we're going to do the projects in twice the time. And now I need to make sure that I'm that much better at my marketing. But as you grow in business, you're going to scale up, and you do have to take some risks. But this is pushing me outside of my comfort zone, because it's easy for me to just not have to push on the marketing, get the next deal, because I know it's going to take Gord 3 months, 3.5 months to do the project on his own with my other trades. So I can kind of be lazy about it. But now that I know I've got another guy whom I'm responsible for his family and his livelihood, now it's going to push me to, just make sure that I'm a little bit more diligent and because I want to scale the business. So I'm positioning myself in a way where I have to do more and I have to perform better. So I'm kind of using that to my advantage.
And how are you? So yeah, awesome. We're totally pumped for you. And I just knowing you as, we don't know each other super well, but I know enough about you that you're totally going to pull this off. How are you finding the systematic way to get new properties? Like, are you rehabbing properties in Toronto proper, around the GTA? Like, what is your system? I don't know if it's like too secret you can't share with us, or no, but for real, because I'm not asking you to give all your secrets on how you find properties,
right? But
can you just paint a picture so people understand, hey, here's the kinds of things I'm doing? Well,
as you know, so when I first started, it was mostly MLS properties. I think most people start out there, and that's fine. As you know, now it's harder to get MLS deals. The spreads are just not as good as they used to be. The key for people that are listening to the podcast, I just want to put that out here as a tip. If you want to find properties on MLS, there are properties out there, but you have to it's all about speed. You have to be the first to see it. You gotta get your offer in right away, and you got to nab it.
Oh my God. Just on that point, when we first started helping investors buy properties and then we saw a good deal come up, Nick and I would literally be racing from Oakville to somewhere like Brantford or Hamilton, like literally speeding to get there. and then talking to the listing agent saying, I have an offer. We don't even know which investor we're working with is going to do the offer. Then call the investor saying, I got a hot one here.
Right.
I'm going there right now. If this is good, we're going to be making an offer and you're going to be buying it. And they just trusted us enough. And they're like, okay, I'll come down tonight. I'll check it out. We're like, no, not tonight. If I get there and this is what I think it is, we're doing this right now. And this is when we used to fax things back and forth.
Right.
I'm like, I have Nick at the office. He's going to be faxing you the paperwork and you're going to fax it over. We're doing this right now.
Right.
So you're right. And that's how it's continued. It's like that the whole time.
That's the only way you're going to get a solid deal with good numbers on MLS.
Yeah.
And now there's enough realtors out there that are realtor investors that they're nabbing it. So you're not just against realtors shopping for their investors anymore. You're against realtors that are shopping for themselves. And so it's even that much harder because they have systems in place to see the properties as quickly as they come up. So I mean, most people start out in MLS. There are still deals to be found on MLS. It's just you need to dig and you got to be diligent. So consistency is key on MLS. But as you know, I do a lot of networking events and people understand what I do now. And now the deals, most of my deals just come to me.
Okay, so you're at that point where people are finding you.
Yeah, they just, they know I'm a serious buyer. I will give you an answer within 10 minutes. I just need to look at the property. Like, I don't see the property. I've bought properties blind without seeing them. So because as an investor, it's all about the numbers for me. And I know my market well enough. I actually had a wholesaler yesterday sent me a text. He goes, are you interested in a mountain property in Hamilton?
Mountain?
Yeah. And I'm like, absolutely. And he gave me a number. I didn't ask about the area. I didn't ask about whether I can duplex it because most Hamilton Mountain I look at them as duplexes. And anyhow, and I right away I said, yep, not at that price. I didn't even have to look it up. It was an immediate decision. And he's like, yeah, okay. So he's got his number. It just didn't work. But you know what? I've done a deal with this guy before and it's cool. So, but he came to me first because he knows, one, I'll give you an answer right away. And two, if it's a yes, it's a hard yes. Like I've bought houses on a handshake. And so people know that they can trust me. So that's what,
And is that what you're doing around the GTA? So like Hamilton, do you focus in on Hamilton? Do you go all over?
My focus is strictly Hamilton right now because I want to, and now I have all my trades, but as I built out the business in Hamilton, I've been in Hamilton now for 3 years. Before I niched it down to one market, I was all over the place. And I quickly realized that every time I go through a rehab, I spend a lot of time in the vetting process, finding the electrician, finding the plumber, finding, at the right price because it's got to work within your budget. And then, I did a flip in Sarnia but I'm never going to see those guys again and I'm not going to keep them busy. It's hard
Sarnia's
to build.
like 3 hours away or whatever.
Well, and that was another issue. I'm doing a lot of time on the road, right? Because I didn't have boots on the ground. So I was there. And then I did one in Port Hope, which was a beautiful property. But same thing, you're dealing with setting up with people that you want to build relationships with. But when you're not consistently doing work in that area, you're not going to build that relationship and build rapport with those people. Like now, I don't even talk, like my plumber, I just give him the lockbox. He goes and we just have a great relationship. So now what I'm doing is I'm actually I got on my A-listers and I'm building my B in case they're too busy or if they're, if they have higher demand, they're going to increase their rates. And that's fine. That's their business model. I need to be ready for that. So I need to have, I've got a B plumber and I've got a B electrician. And so just making sure that I have all my systems in place. Now I can take that and I can use all of what I've created. I'm very systematic with my business. And then I can go to any market and start the process all over again.
You have no single point of failure in what you're building with the B players. Like Nick and I talk about that all the time. Like, where do we have a single point of failure in our business? And then where is that point? And then how can we build multiple redundancy? So is that with a person? Like if we only have one mortgage broker contact,
right,
we're freaking out. One lawyer, we're freaking out, right? One way to generate new leads, like you were talking about leads, we're freaking out. No single point of failure. Number one, like having one in the business is always like the worst for us.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's interesting seeing you kind of do it that way. And then is there a certain, I guess it doesn't matter your profit margin or whatever. So you buy them at the right price, then you know what you're going to be able to sell them for. So you basically know upfront what you need to buy them for. Right. Sounds like a renovation is going to take you about 3 months to do something like that. And you're doing multiple a year.
Right. So my goal close to close is 6 months. So most people, when they look at rehabs, they just look at the time it takes to rehab a property. The problem is that's not how long you're going to have the property for. And the other thing that most people that start out rehabbing, they don't realize from the day you close, it's money out, money out, money out, money out, money out, money out, until the day you sell on your disposition. So close to close is always what you want to think about when you're running your numbers and when you're doing your due diligence. So close to close, my goal is 6 months.
That's not too bad because at close, like someone buys your property, it might be like a 60-day, you're
That's
selling
right.
it vacant, but it
That's
could
right.
be 60 days if they're selling their property, whatever's going on. So 6 months isn't too bad. That's actually pretty good.
Well, I just sold a property on Tuesday that I just finished rehabbing, so what's the date on Tuesday? It was April 9th, and we're closing June 7th. But he, dollars and cents, he was the highest number. And so I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll hold on to the property for an extra month. Makes sense for me financially compared to the other offers that I had on the table. And I said, yeah, sure, let's do that. So that's June. So what is that? April, May, June, that's 2 months. So I had it on the market for about 3 weeks. And I had it on, I had to take it off, put it back on. So that's why it was 3 weeks. So just the selling process was 3 months almost. And people don't think about that. And this is in a good market, healthy seller's market.
It's never really discussed on the TV shows either.
It's really not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really not.
Okay. So, and then I feel like you do some of the work. Like you get your hands, or do you get your hands dirty all the time?
Not all the time.
Okay.
No, I get my
feel
hands
like
dirty.
I've seen a picture of you working.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I haven't or something.
So maybe you saw my pink tools and my...
Yeah, maybe. I feel like I have. But
I
anyway.
do. I have a pink tool belt. I do have a tool belt. I have Carhartts. I've got my black steel-toed boots, and they have hot pink laces. And I sprayed all my DeWalt tools pink. I took spray paint at one of my rehabs. I laid it out on the subfloor, and I just went nuts with
This
two
is a great
bottles
branding
of...
exercise.
Well, listen, people look at me and they say, I'm very intentional with everything that I do.
I
There
can
is
tell.
not
You're very
one
systematic.
guy.
You're
I
very
am.
intentional. I can tell. Every time you say the word systematic, you get excited.
I do. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm very passionate about what I do. But anyhow, so and I was very passionate about spray painting my tools. And I posted that, actually. If you look at my Facebook feed, I actually posted the picture, and I got a lot of flack from the guys saying, how dare you do that to DeWalt? But here's the thing. There is not one guy that I know that's going to steal my pink tool.
Yeah, no, you're totally right.
It's just not going to happen.
I just think about the heat that like the screw gun is going to give off. I'm like, isn't the paint going to start peeling off or something like that? But that's anyway that goes through my mind. You said something about Carhartts.
Yeah, coveralls.
Oh, got it. Those
Yeah.
are coveralls?
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay, got
Clearly, you don't get dirty.
it. No, not anymore. And the thing is, when we did, I didn't have any of the proper tools. I didn't, we were more like, Nick and I getting dirty is more like we're the demo team. We're just going to give us a sledgehammer. We're going
Right.
to rip it out. But any actually skilled work of any sort, no, we're not going to do. We can hang drywall, but that's about it. So yeah, I have basic tools, but no, and anymore, I don't really get dirty anymore. And we mostly do rental property stuff right now. But okay. And back me up a little bit. How did you get into this? Like,
Well, let's go way back, Tom. Sorry. I've always been drawn to real estate. And so when I was about 20 years old, maybe 21, I wanted to be a realtor. Somebody told me that it was a dishonest trade. And then they gave me a couple of examples. They're like, well, look, if somebody dies in the property and you're selling it, you're not going to tell other people that somebody died. And so you're going to have to lie about that.
That's not even true.
And,
you legally have to
well,
disclose
you do
that.
legally
Yeah.
have to disclose, but the realtor profession back then had a really bad rap. Now it's a whole different, the landscape has
Does it
changed.
have a good rap now?
Yeah, well, it's
Oh,
better.
really?
It's better. It's
Okay.
better. Come on,
Okay.
it is
I
better.
associate everyone with a real estate license, myself included. I'm like, there's used car salesmen and
Kind of the
lawyers.
same,
and
yeah, right?
We're lumped in.
Yeah,
you know?
we are. We totally are. And but you know what? There's a lot of great realtors out there, and now there's some laws. It's a regulated industry, and there's some things in place to protect people. But at the time, that's what I was told. Like, if there's a problem with the basement, there's a leak in the foundation, you can't disclose that because you'll never sell the house. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to lie and screw people. I'm just not going to do that. So, is it okay to say that word on the podcast?
Lie?
No.
Screw people? Oh, you're fine. Yeah, it's good. We've said worse. You're good.
So anyhow, I said, I'm not going to do that. So I completely got off of that. And then fast forward a few years, I met my life partner at the time, and he was a contractor. And so I got into the contract, and I've always been like, it's my world. I love it. I love seeing the transformation when we're working and we're changing things and we're updating things. I just love it. And so in the business aspect, it was nice. I was in the office a lot, and because I'm systematic and they weren't, it was him and his brother. So I did a lot of changes and I learned a lot. But then, I took them as far as they were willing to go as far as changes. People will only go as far as they're comfortable. And then I felt like I was hitting a wall, and I said, you know what, I got to do my own thing. So,
how old were you when you did? How long have you been doing this?
Okay. So, I was working in the office. I probably started when I was 29, and then I did that for about 10 years. And then I started doing this I decided, and we had properties. So at the time, so what happened was I, started buying properties, and we were landlords, and I thought I knew everything because I was a landlord. I had it all figured out, Tom. I got this. I'm a
all go
landlord.
through those phases.
I know how to invest. I have a house. I have 2 of them now. Look, I got 3. And so, I thought I had it figured out. I had a whole plan. And then when I realized that I wanted to do something for myself, I decided to go into real estate. And so I bought into a program, had a coach, and learned a lot, realized I knew nothing. I thought I knew everything. I knew nothing.
It's funny, that path we all go through. A little bit of something, you think you're the expert. And then the more you learn, you realize how little you learn.
Absolutely.
And you just kind of keep coming down and down. You're like, oh my gosh, I absolutely know nothing about the subject matter I thought I was the expert in.
Right.
And then it slowly kind of builds back up, and
That's
you come
right.
back up to that expert status that you thought you were at the beginning.
That's right.
When you're telling everyone that you know everything about real estate and real estate investing. I tell Nick now, I'm like, oh my gosh, the more I learn, I study the economy a lot. And I like learning about interest rates and all this kind of global monetary policy. And the first 6 months into it, I'm like, I got it all figured out. Like, I think I understand the global macroeconomic policy of the world. And then as you learn more, you're like, holy smokes, I don't know anything, right? So it's just a standard thing. Keith, I don't want you to miss your train. Keith is leaving. You got to go. So you went through that process, and then you got your real estate license at that time? No, you didn't?
No. So I bought into this program, started, and then at that point, I had made a conscious decision that I was going to take 18 months to start for education. So it was a large investment into this program. And I decided I'm going to get the most that I can out of it, and I'm just going to really take it all in. And so I decided to commit to 18 months just to educate. Now that 18 months was more like 2.5 years. Having said that, through that process,
I wonder if that's a woman thing. I think guys are so like, I'll figure this out. Like, maybe I'll buy some education and I'll just kind of like jump in and do it. But you like committed to learning for a period of time.
Right.
I think guys are more just like, screw it, I'll figure this out as I go. Because I took a lot of those courses. Like, are you talking about the high price, like $1,000 courses? Yeah, we've all been down that higher. Yeah, no, I hear. We've been doing. I'm just older, so we started doing this so long ago that I think it was. I shouldn't say that. Nick spent, I think, 10 grand on a 1-week course, and then I spent another like 8 grand on one. So I think on just real estate stuff, even back then, I guess we're over 30 grand easy.
Right.
I told you I spent $5,000 on a box of tapes.
Yes.
From Robert Allen. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, we're easy. And that was way back then. And then since then, all the money we spent on education stuff. Anyway, I think guys just figure it out. Whereas I kind of admire what you said, that you were willing to dedicate like 18 months to learn. Like, I've never really heard someone say that when it comes to like real estate.
Well, here's the difference, though. Most people that make a life shift like that, you're putting in that investment and you want to make it back right away. And for me, this was a long-term gain. Always was a long-term game plan for me. But my situation was different than most people. I didn't need to make the money back right away because I wasn't a stay-at-home mom because I worked in the office, but I didn't have a traditional job where, I was, we already had family income and we were, it was okay. So, I just wasn't driven by getting dollars and cents today. And so I said, I'm going to take the time that I need now and then get the payoff later. And that's what's happening now. But at the time, I just said, I invested into that for knowledge, not for dollars. And I made sure that I dedicated the time to that. And through that process, they had suggested and ended up convincing me to get my realtor's license. So I also got that in that time frame. So it was more like 2.5 years. And then I started implementing what I learned. And then every year I'm just kind of, it's the snowball effect. So it's taking time and it's slowly kind of growing into a bigger, every year it just gets bigger and better. So,
and we talked about this briefly, and I just want to repeat this because I'm surprised at how many people think that you can make money so quickly in business, and how many people think they're a failure if they don't. Like, that's what bothers me a little bit. So I just want to share this because we talked about this. The first 3 years that Nick and I started Rockstar as a business, we had money flowing, but we were negative. Like, we were barely surviving for easily 3 years. And I think at the 5-year mark of starting the business, we were like, paying ourselves enough where I was sharing a story where I paid for our family's property tax bills one year from the credit line on that house. And, when it comes to finances, I don't think that's really the best idea to take money off the credit line to pay for property taxes. But that's the financial point that I was at. And we had income properties and we were running this business. I think already at that point, people thought we had it all figured out and stuff. So if you're listening to this and you're starting a business, I just want you to know, and just as you're saying, like, the first few years, you have to feed the business. I used to think we were going to start, I really thought this way, that I was going to start a business and I would be able to take $100,000. I know I had that in my head, $100,000 from the business within a year, and life will be glorious. And I didn't realize that basically at the beginning, you push everything back in.
That's right.
Everything. The business needs attention and it needs money. So I can see how you're right. Like, it's a snowball that you're building. But the beautiful thing I can tell you is that now, after Rockstar is now 11 years old, I quit 13 years ago, not quite 12 years ago. Now things have changed, especially in the last few years. There's enough momentum and enough of like a snowball effect.
That's right.
Where, things have come full circle. I remember telling my wife that my income's going to go down if I go in the self-employed route and go into like entrepreneurship and this real estate investing stuff and make a business out of it. But long term, it'll go higher and we'll have more freedom.
Absolutely.
And that, I said, is the most important thing to me. And our income did take quite a hit. It took more of a hit than I ever thought it was going to take. At one point, I was getting GST checks back from the government. I don't know if they still do those, but I guess my tax returns were so low that I guess the government thought I needed help, but I was getting GST back checks. But anyway, I just want to share that so that people know, like, what you're going through. This is like the normal thing, but you're building the foundation.
Absolutely. And that was the whole point of it, is to build a foundation so that when I'm ready to scale, it's just like I'm going to launch. And that's the point where I'm at right now. So, but you're absolutely right on that point. There really is a misconception that, I'm going to do this and then it's just all going to magically appear. Here's what I tell my students. When you're getting into real estate, a lot of them, they're like, well, I want to be a full-time real estate investor and I'm going to quit. And I'm like, no, do not. You're not there yet. Build the foundation first. Put everything in place so that, because all of the foundational stuff are not what is going to generate, they're not revenue generating activities, what we call RGAs. They're not. You have to put certain systems and certain people in place to implement some certain things. You have to put all of those wheels on the bus in order to be able to drive the bus. So you have to put all of these little pieces that you think are insignificant, but you can't drive a bus with one wheel off. They all have to be on. So don't quit until all the wheels are on the bus. Then you can jump in the driver's seat and go.
You're so right, and no one wants to hear that. Like, I remember thinking, and because that's the advice I would give to myself, my 20-year-old self or whatever. But I would be so pissed off at the person telling me that, because I'm like, you don't understand. I'm going to make this work and I'm going to quit. But the advice is so valuable. So how did you figure this out? Like, what are some of the foundation pieces that you think are important? And how did you figure that out? That's like pretty advanced thinking.
Well, I paid for coaching.
Yeah. Okay. So you had like some sort of mentor, some training somewhere.
Yeah,
okay.
I have several, and like I'm north of 100,000 at this point. So I don't know if that's a proud thing or
no. Listen, we added it up like 4 or 5 years ago. Nick and I added up all the conferences, so real estate and marketing and business building stuff. We almost had a heart attack because I think it was like 300. And I'm not saying this to. I don't mean, if this comes across like bragging, I don't mean it. I just want people to know that it's over like 300. This was years ago. It was over 350 grand. This is both of us together, but like the flights and.
But you're going to know, I haven't even put all of that in.
Yeah.
Like but I'm going to tell you the time, it's not just the capital that you're putting in, but the time. It's a tremendous, anybody who knows me knows I spend almost the equal amount of time in a conference room that I do working on my business. And that's because like I have a competitive edge. I know exactly, and that's why I struggle when we talked about this, where dealing with people, I know what I know. And so when I'm dealing with professionals, I have certain expectations that if they're the professional, they should know more than I do. But I am in conference rooms and staying on top of my game and learning about their game. So sometimes it's a little bit challenging, but it's not just the capital investment. It's also the time investment that you put into it. And now, I mean, long term, I'm not going to be spending as much time as I have in the past. I needed to get a solid foundation, which I have now. But as you know, I mean, the numbers are high because as you get better at your craft, the mentors become more expensive. It's just part of how it is. But now I'm at a point where I'm giving back and I'm sharing that as you do with your member base and just sharing our knowledge with other people. So we have pluses and minuses in life. And all of my mentors were my pluses who reached down and pulled me up. And now I'm doing the same and reciprocating that. So, and I'm very excited. Like that's just, I love it. I love.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you more about what you're doing in a second on the, what are you telling your kids are at this age where do they know exactly, so how do you explain, how do you talk about money to your kids? Are you talking about money to your kids yet?
I have.
Are you talking about real estate to your kids yet?
I have.
What do you say?
I bring them to a conference.
I thought you were going to say I brainwashed them.
Well, I'm trying to through a third party. So here's the interesting thing. And as you know, I mean, you can't learn from your spouse, you can't learn from your parent because the dynamics of the relationship is what it is. So you work with what you got. So there's a group that I'm affiliated with and they have, I can go to a conference, bring my kids who will be in a different room and they have a different speaker speaking at their level and teaching them about finances and real estate. So what's interesting about that is I can teach my kids all of that. The problem is they're just not going to listen to me. So what I do is they go into this conference room, they get from them. And I mean, it was just a brilliant thing. They come walking out and my second son, my middle son, he's 13 now. He says to me, he goes, Mom, listen, JP was just talking about this thing, compounding interest, and I think I got it. But can you just go over it with me again just to make sure I got it right? Guess what? Now he's open to hearing from me. So the other thing that I've done, so when I go to my projects, I like to bring them along. I'm very cautious not to drag them along because I don't want them to hate it. So I invite them to come along. I try to get them excited somehow. I've tried to bribe them and say, why don't you come with me and, I'll give you $20 and we can clean windows or something. And that's not working so much anymore. So I think maybe I'm just too cheap or I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not giving them enough. But the thing is that I do my workshops. And so my son is big on photos and videos and videography, and he always wants to use my big camera. He calls it, it's a Canon, I don't even know what kind of, but he likes using it. And I'm like, well, I said, do you want to come and be the videographer for my event? And he's like, oh, okay, so what do I have to do? And of course, we'll go through all of that. Well, now I'm exposing him, but it's his choice. And so he's open to it. And now they see me in a position of authority. So maybe now they'll just be more open to hearing it. And my daughter wanted to come along as his quote unquote assistant. So it was really kind of cute. And I'm really excited about getting them involved when they're a little bit older. They're still kind of young.
Yeah, they're kind of at that age.
Yeah.
Because your oldest, you said 13? 14. I think it was 14. It might have been 13 or 14. I guess I forced him, but I forced my son to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad during the summer. Mm-hmm. And I said, at the end of the summer, I want the 10 favorite points from the book, and I want you to present them to myself and your mom at the front of the room. So you're going to give like an oral presentation, because I was trying to teach him like public speaking at the same time. Right. And I think back at that, I'm like, was I just genuinely crazy?
Did you pay him?
No, I didn't pay him. No, he said, no, there was no incentive. He listened. Yeah. Oh. He listened. I know. My son listens. Now it's not so much. Now he's turning 17 this month. Now he's got very different opinions. Right. And, but he's a great guy.
So what do you do to get your kids involved or teach them?
Yeah.
How do you get over that parental relationship block?
I'm at this point where Aiden, my 17-year-old, he genuinely seems interested still. So he asks me questions about like, why did you and Uncle Nick, start buying rental properties. And then that's like my little opening to be like, well, incomes and assets are, and I'll go into this idea that like incomes don't keep up with assets. I'm like, you know what an asset is? And I'll try to have this, like, I'll try not to get too excited in the conversation. But he genuinely, because I don't tell him anything really about Rockstar. He just sees it, and then I let him ask me the questions.
Right.
And then he, just like you're saying, I let him be open to it. And then I take those opportunities to explain in detail. And I try not to go overboard because I'll get all excited.
I have that problem.
If you get a rental property, this. And so, yeah, me too. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, if you do this and this, you have time and this compound interest and all this thing.
Right.
But now he's at the point, he just started working as a produce clerk because he started driving. And we said, hey, look, we're not going to pay for your gas. You got to do this stuff. Like a car, has these responsibilities. So you're going to have to start working. And I really wanted him to get a job, like not with, like I want him to go out into the world a little bit. And he started asking me questions just recently because we make him structure his bank account so that anytime he gets paid, 50% of all the money coming into his life has to go to a long-term savings account. Then he has other accounts where he can start saving for things. So of the 50% remaining, if he's saving up for something, a chunk goes into that account. And then finally, he has one checking account that's just a spending account. Right. So we've told him this is how you have to divide up your money. And he just commented to me the other day, he's like, already in my long-term savings account, this is how much money I have. So what is this money for? And I'm like, well, if you don't save up money, you're going to live on the street. Okay. You're going to be homeless. I'm joking. So I say you save up your money and then you're going to buy a rental property. That's what I would do with it. It's ultimately going to be your decision. But the reason I would suggest that is this, and this. And then he asked, well, when did Uncle Nick buy his first rental property? And Nick bought his first property at 21. So now he's got this competitive thing going where he's like, I want to beat him.
Oh, that's awesome.
So he's trying to save up to buy his first rental property before he's 21. So we'll see if that happens. So those are kind of some of the things that I'm doing. But the dividing up the money has been a huge thing, just to him to see those bank accounts grow in different ways. I never had anyone explain money to me in that way. And I used to just lump it into one account and spend it all. I never even kept money for taxes. I was a subcontractor. I worked for my father as a subcontractor, doing just basically slave labor type work, cleaning up construction sites, picking up the drywall, just being the laborer. And he would pay me, but they didn't hold back taxes because I was a subcontractor out to the business. And I didn't even hold money for taxes, and I had to pay tax. I learned everything the hard way. So I'm just trying to explain to him a little in advance, like save some money, chop it up this way.
It's funny you say that because I don't tell my kids to save money.
Yeah. So
I tell them there's 3 things you can do with money. You can spend it, you can save it, or you can invest it. And now I learned from one of my students. So now I say there's 4 things you can do with your money. You can spend it, you can save it, you can invest it, and you can donate it.
That's good.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So just to put it out there, you learn from everybody, not just your pluses. You learn from everybody. That totally came from a student. So now I say there's 4 things. But when I say save it, I don't mean save it as in putting it in a bank account. So anybody who knows me, I'm not really frugal with money, but I don't like spending more than I have to on any one thing. So like flying somewhere. If I'm flying somewhere and the connection is $50 cheaper, but it has the same end result, I'm all over it because I'm like, no, that $50 is better than my money. That's how I save money. So I don't save money in the sense of putting money in the bank account. I save money by, shopping at Burlington Coat Factory instead of at the outlet, the name brand store, or I buy a Fossil watch instead of a Michael Kors watch because Fossil makes Michael Kors watches. So I still have a beautiful watch, but it's, cheaper by at least half. And so that's how I save money. But that's what I tell my kids is, there's 4 things you can do with money.
I like it. There's something else I say that's probably rather ridiculous. I tell them that the stuff that's coming through your hands, I go crazy. I'm hesitating to even share this, but I tell them it's not even money. I talk to them about precious metals, and I'm like, hey, look, this stuff just loses value over time. So to your point about investing, that's why we talk about assets and stuff. And I get them to, since they were kids, to buy silver. So, and I talked to them about money, and my daughter came to me at one point. She's like, Dad, everyone in my school seems to have a bank account, But with all the money that I've had over the years, you always get me to buy these silver coins. Like, why don't I have a bank account, you know? And so I talk to her about silver and gold, and I get all crazy about that. But I'm just realizing how ridiculous it all is. But this is all the stuff I kind of believe in. So now, so my kids have, they have a precious metals, little mini education on precious metals as well. But you know, this is a big point. I just want to explain this because now you got me started thinking about this. I love it. That like I try to explain. I'm like, look, incomes don't just keep up with assets. So if there's a spread, so for example, if your income's going up 2% a year in Canada, if you're Canadian listening to this, your income's going up 2% a year, but you think property prices are going up, and pick the number, 5%, 6%, 8%, that's spread. So if your income's going up 2%, but property prices are going up, let's say it's been good the last few years, and let's say it's going up, I don't know, give me 5%, no more, 6%, let's say 6%. So prices double, 2% increase, prices double every 35 years. So at a 4% spread, so if your income's going up 2% a year and your assets are going up 6% a year, there's a 4% difference there. So that means every about 16, 17 years, let's call it 17 years or so, property prices or asset values are doubling on you. Mm-hmm. So if you don't invest your money, like you're saying,
that's right.
Every 17 years, people are going to look around who don't know this concept and say, I just don't get it. Mm-hmm. Everything's more expensive than it was before. Mm-hmm. And every 17 years, so if a lifetime is however many years, 17, what's 2 17s, 34, 4 17s is what, 68. So if you live to 68 longer, but let's just say 68, at 68, things have doubled on you 4 times. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know this concept, you're not going to understand why, right? And I'm like, that's why you need to understand how money works. Otherwise, you're going to be one of those people, because those are the ones that, I don't want to say irritate me, but just almost I feel disappointed in them. I'm like, they look around and they're saying, well, everything's so expensive now. And I'm like, that's the way the system works. Mm-hmm. That's the way this is actually supposed to work this way. And the fact that we don't teach our kids that, I feel like they're getting left behind, because we teach them to get incomes and jobs, and they don't keep up with this stuff. But the system is actually designed to do this. But everyone just looks around saying, I don't understand why things are so expensive. I got way off track.
No, you're absolutely fine. You're actually touching, if I may, Tom, you're actually touching on something I'm really, really passionate about. So one thing I tell my students and everybody that I talk to who's interested in real estate, most people, I'm probably one of the exceptions, but most people don't love real estate. I do. But most people don't love real estate. They get into real estate because they understand that it's gonna allow them the freedom for something later in life. And so typically real estate is a vehicle to your passion. This is one of the things that I'm going to use real estate for, which is financial literacy in the education system, because I am very, very disappointed with the fact that we don't have proper financial literacy. I should not be having seminars and teaching adults about financial literacy in a seminar room that should be taught in our education system. So as soon as I have reached a point where I can afford the time to spend and advocate in Ottawa and make it happen across Canada, and anybody who wants to join me on this, I'm all over.
You preach. I feel like you're going. Yeah,
I am. And once I commit, like, I'm all in. Like, anybody knows me, I'm on both ends of the spectrum. It's all or nothing. And right now, I'm not doing it because I can't commit full to it. But once I decide to pull the trigger on this, I'm going to be all in, and it's really going to be a tornado that's going to fly.
So you'll have to keep us posted on what this is. This freaks me out. Like, I just freak out that our guidance counselors and everything in schools, we just talk about careers and we don't even talk about how money works. It just bothers me to no end.
Yes.
And then when I study this monetary policy and I see what the central bankers do, and I go, oh my God, this is all in plain sight. Like, this is actually how the whole system and whole world is designed, and no one's talking about it. You look around just thinking, you want to shake people, like, wake up, you're getting screwed.
But even Tom, like, you're talking high level, but they don't even teach basic financial literacy. Like, I would be happy just starting with fundamental stuff. As far as like the rule of 72, that's one of the things that I preach in every single one of my seminars. You have to understand the rule of 72 because most people
Explain the rule of 72.
So the rule of 72, Tom, is in the investing world, whatever rate of return you're getting on your investments, you take that, you divide it into 72, and that's how long it's going to take you to double your investments at that rate. So if you take, like with your examples, if you take people that are investing at the bank at the branch level, say 2% in a savings account, it's going to take them, 36 years. Yeah. So 36 years to double your money. So if you have $100,000 in 36 years, you're going to have $200,000. But if you take that rate and you make it, say, 8%, a consistent, now let me just be clear on this, it has to be a consistent 8% annual rate of return, and you divide that into 72, that's 9 years. So every 9 years, you're going to double. So in 36, you're going to double 4 times with the 2%. So if you're looking at the 36-year mark at 2% to double your money, and you take it at 8%, and you double your money every 9 years, you're going to get to that 36-year mark 4 times. So you're going to go from 100,000 to 200,000, 200,000 to 4 to 8, 8 to 1.6 million. So do you want, with a $100,000 investment, $200,000 after 36 years, or do you want $1.6 million?
I like the way you talk about it because you talk about it from a really positive point of view. I always think about that stuff from like this negative point of view, like we're getting ripped off. There's this inflation at 8%, and you talk about it like how it's growing your money, and I'm like, we're all getting screwed because prices are going up. But so I like your approach. It's a better positive approach. I'm like this. God damn it, do you not know we're getting screwed right now? But your approach is it's the better way to talk about this kind of stuff.
Well, and to your point,
I feel like I'm just like, Jesus.
Yeah, well, and that's what people say. You're getting screwed by the bank because the bank takes your money at 2%. Guess what they're doing?
Yeah.
They're lending it out at 12, 14, 19% on credit cards. That's what they're doing. They're taking your money and they're lending it out, and because they have the education and the knowledge. And so, at the end of the day, it's
you're giving them nice credit right now by saying education and knowledge, but they also have the right to create money, because when Danielle goes to the bank and you sign the paperwork to get a new mortgage, they didn't have that money saved up. That money magically came into an existence. Do you know what I mean? So that's very kind of you, and they do have the education and the knowledge, but they also have the right to literally, because that's what's happening when you take a mortgage and that $300,000 gets sent over to the seller of that property that you just bought. The bank just fabricated that out of thin air. And that's where I look at these guys and go, this is a racket.
Okay, but what do you mean that they took it out of thin air?
Well, they didn't have that money. The money wasn't saved up in the bank. So like they didn't have, like when you go to get a mortgage, it's not like they said, you know what, we've done a really good job. We've saved up another $300,000 in deposits from people. And now if Danielle needs a mortgage, we're able to offer her that mortgage.
Oh.
No. They have a small amount of money, and they're able to lend out in multiples against that money.
Against the small amount.
Small amount.
Yeah.
So
okay.
really, when you're signing the paperwork, technically what's happening when you sign the paperwork, that money, that $300,000 mortgage, and then money gets electronically sent over to the seller, that just came into an existence. So the fact that you took on a mortgage, you created new money in the system.
That's interesting.
And that's why we have a debt-based money system.
Well, that, and I know, like the world functions on credit. Everybody's so scared of credit now, but you know what? You just need to understand the money game. And so that you can work it to your advantage.
Put it to your advantage. Yeah.
Like that's
we're
what
on the same page.
That's
totally.
what the bankers are doing. That's what smart investors are doing. They're looking at, and you know what, even in business. So I actually just met with a student of mine prior to coming here. Actually, Tom, I had coffee, and then we talked about that. And she said to me, this is what I learned. You told me this in your workshop. She goes, I didn't think it could happen, and I've done it twice since. And I said, really? She goes, yeah. I go, well, now you're learning the money game of business. And she's like, oh, I love that. I need to know more about that. And I go, but you know what? When it comes to business, it is like, this is the dirty stuff that people don't talk about when it comes to investing and comes to being an entrepreneur and a business owner. You need to learn to manage money, and you need to know more than just the basic concepts. And you need to be able to know so that you can if you know the rules, then you can apply them to your advantage. And it's not, when I say advantage, I don't mean that in a negative way. Sometimes people are like, oh, you're manipulating. Well, I'm not. When you play a game of Monopoly, you're using the rules to your advantage. And so that's exactly what we're doing. So now, because of that conversation this afternoon, I'm going to be building out a workshop just based around the money game. So because it's that important. People don't talk about it. People don't talk about it because they don't understand it. Actually, Tom, I might come to you and say, hey, Tom, can you give me some advice so that I can apply it?
I don't know what kind of, I'll just give you anger advice around that. We're getting screwed. My advice will be like, we're all getting screwed. And that's kind of why you mentioned that you love real estate. And just from seeing you, you truly do love it.
I really
and
do.
I've always looked at it as a view, like I've always looked at it from the other way, like, this real estate thing, I really should figure this out, because this looks like one of the best vehicles that I can see where I can get an information advantage over other people. So to your point, how you know the property price, like in Hamilton Mountain, you're like, I can say no to that property. Part of the reason you can say no to the property like that is you have an information advantage. Your experience over the years gives you that advantage. And I found when I'm investing in stocks or the public markets, someone else has the information advantage. Someone else knows what the Bank of Canada may or may not do next week. Someone else knows what that company's going to do. Whereas when it comes to real estate, not only can I have an information advantage, it's an asset where these percentages that we were talking about in the rule of 72, they work to my advantage now. So it's always been a vehicle for me to ultimately live life on my terms, to your point, like you're what you really want to be doing.
Right.
And the fact that we're able to do that here at Rockstar and help people, and then there's people like yourself out there doing the same kind of thing. I feel like the fortunate thing over, the last 10 years, I feel in this area of the Golden Horseshoe, there's a bunch of us all doing this stuff together. And my hope is that it's raising all of us financially.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I feel like we're just like high-fiving each other right now. Like, yes, you got, but I mean, that's the truth. That's what I don't know. That's what kind of we're all about. And I can tell you're about the same stuff. So if someone's going to start flipping or rehabbing properties, what advice would you give them just at the beginning? If someone's like, I'm going to start this.
Oh, well, hands down, they need to get educated. Either get a coach or learn by getting.
Can you get a book to do it or no?
Oh, for sure. There's tons you can Google it. You can watch YouTube videos. You don't have to pay for coaching. There's a lot of good information out there that'll give you enough to help negate any risk, not all risk, but some risk. And so, and that's what knowledge does for you, right? The benefit of having a coach is that they'll hold you accountable, keep you moving forward. That's the difference. So here's the biggest problem with getting education is that most people, they're like, oh, I don't know enough yet, I can't do it. No, I don't know enough yet, I can't. So at some point, just be mindful if you want to get into it. Yes, get educated and get the knowledge, whichever way you decide to do that. But don't spend 5 years on that. Like, you need to decide, now it's enough. I have enough, and I've got people around me. If you're going to networking events, I've got people around me that I can bounce an idea off of or bounce a deal off of and get validation, whether it's good or it's a bad deal, and pull the trigger. Like, you have to start implementing. That's the only way you're going to get any success in any field at all, is by implementing what you learn. I mean, if you can go to any colleges and get an MBA, but you're not going to get a successful business if you're not actually implementing what you learned at the college. And this is the same concept.
Yeah, so that's funny you say that, because some people seem to get stuck. And they're like, well, I don't feel like I have all the information. And I'm like, well, the last 20% that you're missing, like if you feel like you're like at 8 out of 10 and you're missing that last 2%, that only comes from doing shit. So like you actually have to take the leap, make a bunch of mistakes, and that's your final piece of education. So unless you actually begin, you're never going to feel ready.
That's right.
And it's that kind of normal feeling. We started with books, and then I graduated to some of these tapes I mentioned, then to live courses, then to like personal mentors and stuff like that. And we duplicated that with business as well. So we did it in the real estate field, and then we spent the same money on the other thing. And I've always looked at education as an investment.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you're the same way. So get educated, and then I guess to start rehabbing. Go ahead.
Here's what I'd like to say about that. So yeah, get the education. And then when get out there, start putting out offers and be very conservative when you first, just so that you can get the feel of, like, if you want to rehab a house, you got to walk through, you got to analyze it every time. So the more you walk through properties, the more you analyze it, the better you're going to get at it. And so, at first it's not going to be, listen, you're going to go so low ball on your offer, and that's completely fine. Get it in so that you can start getting comfortable, because you'll never get comfortable doing it until you start practicing it. So do it a lot, be really conservative. So for a newbie investor, I always say put conditions in the offer, because then you'll have an exit strategy. So whether it's condition of financing or a condition of property inspection, you always have that out in case you didn't analyze the numbers properly. If you get it under contract get a second set of eyeballs on it if it's your first or second property. It doesn't hurt. Now, here's the one thing that I hear a lot, and this is what I want to say. I really want to quash the stigma that's out there with private money lenders. A lot of people are like, oh, there's no money. I've brought, people deals all the time, and I always keep saying no. That's because it wasn't a good deal. And I want that. Let me just repeat that, Tom, may I? That's because it wasn't a good deal. And I tell you from experience, and I tell you from what I know, if somebody brings me a good deal, I'm all over it, because the relationship between a rehabber, a flipper, a working investor, and the capital investor is symbiotic. They need you as much as you need them. So don't look at the investor as the capital investor when he says no as a bad guy because he doesn't want to lend to you. He's actually saving your behind. And that's because if it's a good deal, he's going to be all over it. So if you're getting a lot of no's, you want to go back and start looking at how you're analyzing the properties, and maybe the spreads are just a little too thin because there's something that you're missing when you're doing your calculations. And there's a lot of numbers, hidden costs that people don't think about when they're doing rehabs, and that's how they get hurt. And here's the one thing that I tell all of my newbie investors. When you're analyze the number one mistake that newbie investors do is that they overanalyze the property when they overanalyze what they can get when it's finished, and they overvalue what the property will be worth when it's finished, and they undervalue the cost of the renovation. So if you have a $40,000 spread as for your profit, after you're paying your capital investor and all of your holding costs and your buying and your disposition costs, all of that included, and you've got a $40,000 profit margin. Think about this for a minute. If your ARV meaning after repair value, you think you can sell it for $500,000, and let's say your rental cost was valued at $40,000. Well, now you only sold the property at $480,000. That's not a big difference. If you're selling the property at $480,000, you listed it at $520,000, say, because you wanted $500,000. You sold it at $480,000. Completely doable. Like that happens all day long. And then the rental costs, you went over budget by $20,000. Where's your profit? And if it's your first rehab, you didn't do it in 6 months. You did it in 9 to 12. So now you just invested all of that time, the better part of a year, and you made no money.
And often you're becoming the motivated seller that you were looking for when you started this whole thing.
That's very true.
Yeah.
So the reason why I tell this story, Tom, is because I want people to understand, if you're going to a lender, they're not liking the numbers. It's not you. It's not the deal. It's not because they don't want to work with you. It's because the numbers don't make sense. So you really got to go back and say, go to Tom, go to Danielle, go to the people that that are investing, say, what am I missing here? Like, this is a deal. Why would this not be a good deal? And have somebody educate you, because you're missing something. You're either too lean on the numbers, you're overvaluing what the house will be worth on the back end. Maybe you're undervaluing the rental. There's something that's missing there. Or maybe you're just not calculating all the holding costs properly.
So the way you analyze this, you're obviously well thought out. You've mentioned students a bunch of time. Tell us, how did you get into it? You're now teaching people. Tell us about this.
Yeah. So, so what happened last year?
You took a big breath there.
Yeah. It was a big turning point for me. I really had to sit back and reevaluate the direction where my businesses were going. And I was really focused on just the flips, but people, I was starting to get reached out to ask to speak at events. And so I started speaking at, local real estate groups, and people were really starting to reach out to me to help educate them, because what I do know, because of the fact that I just committed so much time to learning everything, I understand my craft very well. And so what happened was people were reaching out, and I love helping people. And so I never said no. And then there was 1 week where I spent, and I calculated it, it was 6 hours just in 1 week that I had dedicated to just helping people. 3 of them were on-site visits to properties. 3 were on the phone. And so I realized at that moment, it was starting to impede on my businesses and my goals. It was starting to hold me back a little bit. And then I said to myself, and the last call that I had, it was on a Saturday. I remember I'd pulled up to pick up my dry cleaning, and I sat outside the dry cleaners for the better part of an hour finishing up this phone call. And at the end of the call, he says to me, he goes, Danielle, that was the absolute best hour I've spent in my entire life, which I think might have been just a little bit more than a little bit blown up. But that's what he said to me. He goes, would you sit down with me and go over my whole portfolio and help me get unstuck? And I at that that was a moment for me. That's when I decided, you know what, I either need to learn to say no, or I need to make it a win-win. So I'm always about making win-win situations and build win-win relationships. And so I realized I don't want to say no, because I want to help people. I love helping people. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to have to monetize my time if it's going to work, because it has to be a win-win. So that's when strategic success happened.
So now you have, is it strategic success consulting?
That's right.
So strategic success consulting, this is where like you're teaching workshops, boot camp, like what are you doing with people?
So right now I'm just doing live events.
Okay.
I am
and
going
this is specifically for rehabbing, teaching how to rehab, or all parts of real estate investing?
All investing.
This is like a one-day thing that you do?
Like I said, and now like literally as I'm talking, the demand is crazy. So I've got my 2-day workshop, which is reverse engineering real estate. So most people, they hear about a strategy, they think it's great, and then they try it and it doesn't work out. That's because you didn't look at yourself first. So with that workshop, we look at where you are, what you have to invest, time, capital, equity, what do you have? And then we start looking at different what your goals are, your short-term goals, your long-term goals. And then we start looking at strategies and match them up. Because if you're in the wrong strategy, it's not going to work. It's just not. So many people have a full-time job and decide they want to flip a house, and it's just
disaster.
Total disaster.
Disaster.
Total disaster. Yeah. And some people are adamant. And I say, okay, if you really want to do it, you got to try it. It's not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. And if you don't have the time to commit to it, but a lot of times we just need to learn, like you said, we got to learn the hard way. Yeah. So I say, do it once, you're going to learn a lot.
And I shouldn't say that, because Nick and I both did that. And there's a lot of 4 a.m.s and a lot of 1 a.m.s, up early, up late. And so it's totally possible. I don't want to tell someone totally they can't do it. But sorry, go on. I cut you off.
No, so at the workshop, that's how it started, with the one workshop. And that workshop, the purpose of that workshop is to help people find clarity in the right and get the path. So I teach them, okay, these are the strategies that you should be focusing on, so that when I start, and that's the first half of the first day, and then when I start getting into the content, they can apply it, what they're learning, to the strategy that they now have in their minds, so that when you're done the workshop, you have the confidence to pull the trigger. Because at the end of the day, we can't pull the trigger and implement anything if we're not confident. We need to have some sort of knowledge and confidence in order to get out there. So that's how it started. But now I just, because I'm in these rooms a lot, I've gone through the process myself. It's still, I'm very connected with the road and the path that you have to take to become a real estate investor. And so I kind of know where and then there's people. So there's a lot of people now, they hear about self-directed RSPs. They're like, Danielle, how do I do that? And I'm like, well, I can't teach that in 10 minutes. There's so much for you to know and to learn, and questions you need to ask when you're vetting people, and you need to keep your money busy. It's not passive. Kind of semi-passive, but there's still some active component to it. And there's the good and the bad. And a lot of people, they get on stage and they say, oh, you should do self-directed and this and that. And they're self-serving. They're trying to get you to unlock your RSP so that they can borrow it. But are they going to keep your money busy? And if they're not going to keep your money busy at the end of the deal that you do, guess what? Now you're 8%.
Is that what's happening at some conferences?
Yes.
People are teaching self-directed investing, but they're the ones who want access to the money?
Absolutely.
Really,
self-serving. And so it's really frustrating for me.
That's frustrating. That's the kind of stuff that frustrates me. That's part of the reason I don't personally go to many conferences or events and stuff, because I hear stuff like that and it just kind of like, I shudder a bit, and I don't know, we just keep to ourselves a little bit.
Right.
But I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah. So what happened is I pitched it out there, and now people are like all over that. So now I'm building out several, because strategic success is really becoming its own monster. Just by demand, there is a serious demand for good content.
But this is fulfilling what you wanted to do, educating people.
Well, you know what? I can't, well, you know this, Tom, because you do this, but there is a level of personal reward when you can elevate someone. And I can't even describe it. Maybe you can try to describe it to your audience.
It's the only thing that keeps you sane, because when people come back to you saying, hey, I was able to do this, this, and this, and it might be 3 years later or 5 years later, you sometimes I'm like, thank you for telling me that, because I was just about to shut down the entire business. And
it's absolutely true.
So just your comment back to Nick and I, sometimes in business is tough. And sometimes we're like, what are we even doing? But then you'll hear a story like that and it's fuel. That's what it is to me. It's pure fuel. It's like, you know what? We have to do this. We have to keep going. We have to try to keep helping and doing these podcasts like we're doing, and these little videos that we're trying to share information. And that's what it is for us. And I'm sure it's the same for you. It's just like, you know what, by you sharing back how important this information was to you and what you were able to benefit. Now we've been helping people for like 12 years. Some people have adopted children. Some people have helped families come to Canada. Some people have built for their in-laws special houses they need with special needs and this kind of stuff. And they're telling us, hey, it's because I was able to take some of the concepts and make some money that I didn't know I was going to be able to make. Some people are new immigrants and they were going to buy franchises, but instead they got into real estate investing, and they tell us, now we have X number of dollars in equity in these properties. You've changed our lives. We're sending money back home, and
paid for their kids' education.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I forgot the obvious. Paid for the kids' education.
Absolutely.
And it's like, that's the one thing that just keeps us going. It's just fuel, because real estate is tough.
It is.
Dealing with bankers and lawyers and accountants and CRA, and sometimes you're just like, screw it. So anyway, but we haven't. We're keeping
so
going.
If you know any good banker, lawyer, accountants.
So anyway, but that's what it is for us. Sorry, I feel like I went on a rant.
No,
there
it's
again.
okay. It's okay.
But so
Rants
I
are
totally know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I totally know.
So for me, it's like super rewarding. It's just as rewarding. So like when I take a house and I take a destroyed house and I make it into this beautiful house that all the neighbors on the block are envious about, because of course, when you do an open house, all the neighbors have to come and check it out. And so they come and they're like, oh, I wish my house looked like this. So I know that I'm taking this house that was driving down the neighborhood, and maybe there was trash on the lawn, and maybe it was bad tenants that were living there. Maybe there was a yapping dog, or, and this house that was in distress and depleted, and I bring it back to a glory that I don't know. And then I know I have a nice family that's buying it, and they go in and they're going to reward that benefit and not have a headache, a home that they can actually relax in. I mean, that's the same. That's why I love what I do. And I get the same feeling when I'm teaching, because I know that I'm empowering and I'm enabling people. I'm giving them tools that they need in order to get closer to their goals. And so, sorry, now it's my turn to rant.
No, you're good. You're good. So when's the next one? Is it coming up?
So I have a 2-day workshop.
You said May. Is it April? May?
May, yeah. So I got a 2-day workshop, May 4th and 5th. I do run them like every 2 months or so, not including the summer, because I am a workaholic, but the summertime, sorry guys, we're all taking off. Actually, real estate, if anybody's in real estate kind of like comes to like everything
slows down,
like all the doors shut down in July and August. So I don't run them, but now I've got the entire month of June booked every weekend. I'm building out and analyzing the numbers and knowing the numbers program, and I've got the self-directed RSP program now that I'm going to be offering in June.
How do people find the URL to go to?
So you can go to my website at strategicsuccessconsulting.com. And /events will take you to the events page, and I'll have a calendar of events happening that's on there. Just to put it out there, we're going to have that live next week. So
but strategicsuccessconsulting.com as the main URL. You can go there now. And /events.
/events. Right now, the main site, this is all so new. And anybody who's done anything online, it's a monster to learn. I think, honestly, Tom, I'd say that's probably worse than flipping a house.
Yeah. But, so if you're listening to this and you can't write down this URL and you want to check out Danielle's stuff, we're going to link to it off the show notes for this page. So you can go to rockstarinnercircle.com/podcast. You'll find a link to this episode there, and we'll link out to strategicsuccessconsulting.com/events. And that'll show the different events.
And then we're going to have all the events. That's going to be my calendar. You'll be able to click once it's up and running, once it's live, which is going to be, like I said, in the next week or so.
What about Facebook and stuff? You mentioned Facebook. Are you on?
Yeah. So, it's funny you say about being validated when people share their story. So I I do Facebook Live videos. It was just kind of a fun thing to do in the beginning. And now if I don't do one after 3 days, I get messages and like my phone blows up really.
So you're doing them at your property that you're working?
I do them when
Wherever?
I'm driving. I do them at my like everybody wants to see the properties, right? But I kind of feel like it gets repetitive. So I just want to mix it up, and I just want everybody to have value. So when I have a thought, when I have something that I think can benefit people, I just jump on and I do these live videos and I
what's
share
the
them.
handle for that?
So it's facebook.com/Danielle Chiasson.
Okay.
Or Danny Chiasson, Dani Chiasson, Chiasson. Yeah.
So we'll link to it as well.
Okay.
Danny
cool.
Chiasson. Facebook.com/Danny Chiasson.
Danny Chiasson.
Anything else you want to hand out right now before we wrap?
Yeah, you know what? I probably should be better prepared for that, but I think that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough for now.
You're going to have to come back. We appreciate this a lot.
I would love to come back. Thank you. It's an honor being here.
Yeah. Thanks, Danielle. Hey everyone, it's Tom Kravitz. Hopefully you enjoyed that chat. We always love talking to people who are actually doing what they're talking about, and Danielle's definitely one of those. And if you want some Canadian real estate education from us, you can go to CanadianRealEstateTraining.com. That's CanadianRealEstateTraining.com. You can save a seat for one of our introductory training classes. They're about an hour and a half. Nick and I teach that class. You can pick up all the different information on how we're investing today. From there, we stick around afterwards to answer any of your questions. And listen, if you are listening to this and you think we've earned some feedback from putting on these podcasts on iTunes specifically, if you could give us some feedback, a review or a rating, we greatly appreciate it. It means a lot to us. That's kind of the fuel that keeps driving this thing. We're not even completely sure what we're doing with this podcast, but we're getting enough positive feedback that we're going to keep doing it. So thank you for everyone who's done that already. If you haven't and you think we deserve it, if you could please do so. It really means a lot to us. So thank you. And that's it for this episode. Until next time, your life, your terms.